is my honor and pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Prince Heto. Prince was born in Pondo, Ghana, where he experienced just extreme poverty, inequality, and lack of educational resources. But through all these struggles, he was able to overcome, and he was able to earn his bachelor's degree from the University of Ghana. He also went on to pursue and earn 2 further master's degrees in global studies and international relations, as well as educational leadership and societal change. And he is currently studying at UC Irvine, in which he is pursuing his 3rd master's degree in demography and social analysis, as well as his PhD in political science. And because of Prince's upbringing, he was just inspired to give back, and he created his own non-governmental organization called Indie Educational Initiative, which serves teachers and students across 5 different continents, in which it hopes to advance student achievement and retention and graduation rates, as well as train teachers. Prince has also worked in the United Nations with various organizations like the African Union and the World Trade Union. And we are a World Trade Organization. And we are so thankful to have Prince here, in which he will share some of his life story and his words of wisdom. So please help me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Prince Heto.
Dean Mueller, Associate Dean Mark Patrica, Global Connect founder and Curriculum Development Advisor Ellen Slosser, Global Connect Director Jessica, Global Connect scholars, distinguished graduates, esteemed guests, my friends, I am honored to be here today and to have watched that video. That was really inspiring. I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate all of you for graduating from the Global Connect program and for all the work you put into that throughout the academic year. Please join me also in expressing our appreciation to all the people who support Global Connect and yourself. I would like to extend special gratitude to the schools that partner with Global Connect. Laguna Hills High School, are you in the house? Newport Harbor High School, are you in the house? Okay, come on, is that all you got? Are you in the house? Okay, I'm gonna see which school makes the most noise. So, Laguna Hills High School, are you in the house? Newport Harbor High School, are you in the house? Early College High School, are you in the house? Ensign Intermediate School, are you in the house? T. Winkle Middle School, are you in the house? Yes! I think they got it. Global Connect, from my understanding, was established to address the knowledge gap of 21st century global issues that exist in our public schools. I agree that it is important for all people to understand the different ways global, national, and local issues affect our lives. Graduates, you are now part of a privileged group of people who have the skills and technical know-how to understand issues of global importance. I am sure you are aware that the more you utilize these skills, the more useful you would find them. However, the most important question is, why should you bother? What is the point? A proverb from Ghana says, the freedom that comes from lack of self-knowledge and societal knowledge makes only one a slave. The moral of this proverb is that if you have sound knowledge of your abilities, weaknesses, desires, community, and the people you interact with, you will be able to attain a state of inner peace and be in harmony with others around you. This knowledge of self, environment, and others will enable you to relate with others meaningfully and purposefully. In other words, knowledge leads to freedom and ignorance misleads. In the world we live in today, our neighborhood is no longer the houses next door. It is the world at large. Therefore, continuing to learn about the beautiful and mysterious world that we live in would help us understand the power we have as individuals and the limitations on our ability to fully harness and develop our agency, inner peace, and happiness. The point I want to emphasize is that if we lose our seeking spirit or the eagerness to learn, we would remain ignorant of the insight and understandings we need for living fully and creatively. The 20th century Japanese educator Tsunesaburo Makiguchi said, when we think of great people of history, we tend to think of them as people whose achievements are beyond us. But that is far from the truth. Every person has inborn natural talent and potential. Then, why do these differences come about? Makiguchi said, I believe it hinges upon whether or not a person has learned to see or grasp the true nature of all things with penetrating insight and understanding. The great people of history, Makiguchi said, honed their vision to a higher degree simply through direct observation of the marvels of nature and the world around them. Most of us only look at the surface of things. I learned how to appreciate each learning opportunity as a child. At the age of 6, my dad and I moved to the capital city of Ghana, Accra, for him to attend teacher training college. Fortunately for me, my dad took to heavy drinking and was barely home. So I had to do many things for myself. Every morning around 5 a.m., I had to walk with our house help for about an hour and a half along one of the busiest highways in Ghana to go and fetch water before going to school. Honestly, I did not like the idea of waking up at 5 a.m. and walking around just looking for water. Also, I was not a big fan of the punishment I received for being late to school each morning. But since I had no choice, I often looked for things to keep me occupied during our 3 hours water hunt. When I lifted my head and started paying attention to the world around me, I noticed that some people were sleeping by the roadside in dirty condition. Observing these people every morning with my sleeping eyes motivated me to learn more about why people chose to sleep outside instead of at home. Through my search, I learned a lot about poverty, war, and preventable diseases that were killing people in Ghana and around the world. I discovered that in 1992, 56.5% of people in Ghana were living in poverty. Out of the 56.5% of the population that was living in poverty, 38% of them were living in extreme poverty. That means they only had $1.25 to spend per day. This problem was not unique to Ghana alone. Around the same time, in 1990s, an estimated 52% of the world's population was living on less than $1.25 per day. Close to 30% of the world's population did not know how to read or write in 1995. In parts of Asia and Oceania, the number of illiterate people was higher than 50% of their population. In the 1990s, the average person, regardless of where you live, was not expected to live beyond 65 years old. In Ghana, the life expectancy rate in the 1990s was 57 years. The state of education was not good either. For example, my friends and I had to walk for about 45 minutes each way to go to school. The elementary school I attended was built out of aluminum roofing sheet and large timber beams. The classrooms were not fully enclosed. They were just partially covered overhead. Also, the classrooms had no flooring, only the ground underneath. So when it is windy, we have to cover our eyes to prevent the dust from getting into our eyes. In the 5th grade, my classroom was under a tree. In addition to infrastructure challenges, I had a hard time because some of our teachers were not professionally trained. In high school, I did not have teachers for most of my classes. These experiences and data served as one of the sources of inspiration for me to take my studies seriously so that I can grow up and help solve some of the problems. Despite the struggles, growing up in Ghana in the 1990s was a great experience. Trust me, it was really awesome. The country returned to multi-party democracy in 1992, and everyone, including us children, was excited. Democracy, we believe, was going to be the magic that kept the key that would transform our destiny. As part of the euphoria, I vividly remember my cousin and I would go around from one polling station to another polling station on the night of election, collating our own results. Democracy brought along with it economic and cultural changes. Television became popular in the 1990s. In the early part of the television revolution, it was only the rich people who had some in their houses, and there was only one TV station or channel in the whole country. In the evening, people would gather around the television in their neighborhood to watch the 7 o'clock news. My mom had a TV, so her house was the neighborhood gathering place every evening. It was great and fun watching the news, soccer games, or sitcoms with people in our neighborhood. I have fond memories of my childhood because the traditional way of life was existing side by side with the new way of life. It was possible to experience both the traditional way of life and the new way of life at the same time in the same community. And it was interesting to observe the different ways people were trying to react and respond to the changes taking place in our society. Many people were eagerly reaching beyond their comfort zone in hope of experiencing the new way of life. Some tried to grab both. Others loved the old, held onto it, and rejected the new. 26 years later, there are still many problems, but a lot has changed as well. According to a 2016 report published by researchers at the UNICEF, Asahi University, and University of Sussex, Ghana alone reduced the rate of poverty from 56.5% in the 1990s to 24.2%. The number of people who can read and write has increased from 20% to 76.6% over the same period. The life expectancy rate of Ghana is now 65 years instead of 57 that it was in the 1990s. There has been an improvement in the global situation as well. So these are pictures of what Accra looks like right now. This is a cinema in Accra. And this is Accra at night. There has been improvement in the global situation as well. The average person in the world today is expected to live until 72 years of. We have been able to reduce the number of people who cannot read and write from 1.9 billion to 775 million people as of 2017. The number of people living in extreme poverty has been reduced from 2 billion people in the 1990s to 705 million people in 2016. Reflecting on the breathtaking pace of change that my generation witnessed in our lives makes me feel hopeful and incredibly fortunate to have lived during that time. My reason for optimism is not only because the situation is getting better, it is because of the characteristics of the people that led the process of change. The person who ushered in the era of transformation in Ghana through restoring democracy was 32 years when he first came to power. Albert Einstein, that we all know of, was noticed by the scientific community when he was 26 years old. Martin Luther King Jr. led the Montgomery bus boycott at the age of 26. At the age of 16, Abraham Lincoln was already serving the land of Virginia, and he was made the commander of all Virginia troops by the age of 23. Bill Gates wrote his first software program at the age of 13 and started Microsoft at the age of 21. Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook at the age of 19. I am here today to tell you that you do not have to build the next Microsoft or Facebook to change the world. What is important is to make the determination that you would contribute to solving a problem in your community, or at the very least, do no harm. There are millions of other young people who are already playing a vital role in solving social problems. So there are so many people you can learn from if you are not sure of what to do. And the people who are leading Global Connect is a good example of that. I would like to tell you the story of one organization that you would not likely hear about, called Akpini Giant Association for Development, AGAD for short. AGAD is made up of 21 young people or young professionals who started the group in 2015. And we contribute our money to undertake development projects in our hometown, Pando, and surrounding villages. Over the last 3 years, AGAD created opportunity for some 130,000 people to undergo an annual physical examination. 2 days from today, on May 20th, AGAD team is partnering with the Ghana National Malaria Control Agency to do a malaria screening in 5 villages. The malaria screening is expected to benefit 2,000 people. The program is important because malaria is a serious health concern in Ghana. In 2016, there was an estimated 216 million cases of malaria, and almost 500,000 people died as a result of malaria. Similarly, I founded Indie Education Initiative, a nonprofit together with some friends in 2017. The goal of the nonprofit is to improve the educational experience of 3 million learners and 150,000 educators by the year 2030. I started Indie Education Initiative as a way of repaying my debt of gratitude to the people who supported me. I feel incredibly fortunate to have encountered so many people who have helped raise me. As a result, I want to reach out and contribute to the growth and development of other young people around the world. The irony of life is that there is a group of people that say that they are training you to be the leaders of tomorrow. Young people are the people who led change in Tunisia, and that is why Tunisia has democracy today. It is young people who started the democracy movement in Hong Kong. It is young people who fought and won independence for many African countries. We young people have often served as the moral compass of society. So, you, my dear friends, are not the leaders of tomorrow. Rather, you are the leaders of today. We, the youth, are the builders of tomorrow. We are the custodians of the world we will build, and the people who will create the scope and enabling environment for the young people of tomorrow to be able to build the kind of future they want. My goal for raising these issues is to draw your attention to the theme of this symposium, the voice of a generation, and to provoke a conversation on the important contribution youth are making on a daily basis in schools, places of work, civic organization, and the world at large. I want to celebrate all of you, the young people in this room, who are building the future of our world now. While I celebrate you and all the change makers in the world, I am aware that a lot of work remains to be done. So let's not rest on our laurels. Now is the time for us to solve the intractable problems of the world, like war, poverty, dehumanization, and disrespect for life. As we buckle up to take on the intractable problem of the world from now onward, it is important for us to reflect on the question, why did the earlier generation fail in their attempt to tackle these problems? The answer to this question, in my opinion, is due to a lack of shared sense of purpose. Change makers across the world sometimes find it difficult to agree on the ideal world or on what the ideal world will look like. They set goals based on what sounds good to them at the moment, but failed to articulate the kind of society they would eventually emerge when they aggregate all their goals. For example, we talk about the need for world peace, but fail to describe what a world that is at peace would look like. Here in America, we talk about the American dream. What does it mean in practice? How would a society built on the American dream look like? It is time for us to put in place a mechanism through which we can develop a clear vision of the kind of society we want to live in. It may end up looking like a science-fi vision board, but we cannot build the future if we don't know what we are building. Without a definite purpose, our leaders rather end up creating more problems for the world. The people we elect and tax to lead the process of uniting us and helping us harness the full potential of humanity to build a better world find it difficult to agree on the best way to solve societal problems. These leaders often work across purpose. When we shift the focus from the leaders onto us, the people, it is easy to notice that the public space has shrunk. We now live in a world where everyone is building what they think is good for society in their own little corner. I think it is important for all the people of the world, particularly those of us who want to change the world, to ask the following question. For what purpose do we seek to change the world? What kind of world will we be building if we achieve all the sustainable development goals? How are we contributing toward the overall health of society? What is the cost of our action to society? Will I be happy if it is my neighbor and not me that is imposing those costs on society? These questions, I believe, will get us to think about the kind of world we would live in when we achieve our goals. I hope you would decide to live lives of improving other people and contributing to society. In the spirit of modeling what I have just said, I would like to share with you my idea of the kind of world I want to live in. 1, I would like to live in a world where all children, regardless of socio-economic and ancestral heritage, receive quality education that allows them to foster for themselves the ability to learn. I would like to live in a world in which learners are given the opportunity to develop the capacity to find meaning, to enhance their existence, and contribute to the well-being of others under any circumstances. I would like to live in a world where all people have a place to call home or a house to live in with good running water and electricity without always feeling anxious about the ability to keep that roof over their head, irrespective of their socio-economic background. I would like to live in a world where all people can afford to eat healthy meals without having to skip or compromise the quality of the food they eat because they cannot afford it. I would like to live in a world where people feel that they have other people who they can turn to if they are in dire situations. I want a world where all people feel safe and have a healthy, trust-based support network that they can count on. Lastly, I want to live in a world where people are happy, gracious, and grateful for simply being alive and for having people who care about them in their lives. A world in which our happiness wells forth from our lives like a burst of sunshine within. I want a world to be populated with people who have compassion, hope, and courage to face the many challenges that they encounter in their daily lives. When we can individually articulate our own vision of the world we want to live in, our generation will be able to work together to create a collective vision of the world we all want to live in and hold each other accountable to it. A shared sense of purpose is vital. Permit me to share one more story to demonstrate this point. John Kennedy, at the age of 44 years, inspired the people of our dear nation to unite around the goal of sending a human being to the moon. President John Kennedy, in 1961, went to NASA headquarters, and he met a man that was mopping the floor. President Kennedy asked the man what he did at NASA. The janitor replied, "I am helping put a man on the moon." United by a shared sense of mission, demonstrated by this story, the people of our great nation succeeded in sending a man to the moon in 8 years. This story serves as a timeless reminder to us that if we develop a shared sense of purpose and commitment, we stand a better chance of eradicating poverty in all forms, improving the quality of education, honoring and respecting the dignity of all lives, and providing quality health and personal care for all people. The challenges of humanity can be solved, but it will not be easy. What I want to share with you is that no matter how difficult the journey is, if we do not give up, we shall succeed. After many decades of quite the same old approaches to solving societal problems, the world is now looking up to us, the youth of 2018, to write a new chapter for a more sustainable, inclusive, and compassionate world. But you cannot be valuable to the process if you decide to stop learning. I hope you would choose the path of continuous growth. I want you to continuously learn about yourself, your community, and other people you interact with for the rest of your life. Let me conclude my speech by sharing with you one of the quotes that I hold dear to my heart. It is a quote from a Japanese philosopher called Daisaku Ikeda. When your determination changes, everything would move in the direction you desire. The moment you resolve to be victorious, every nerve and fiber in your being will immediately orient itself toward your success. On the other hand, if you think this is never going to work out, then at that instant, every cell in your being will be deflated and give up the fight. Now is the time. Let's seize it without fear. Let's live contributive lives. Let's turn ordinary moments into joy-filled, value-creating moments. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prince, for that inspirational talk. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling extremely inspired to go out and take action. We just wanted to present Prince with the Global Connects Global Citizen Award. Thank you, Prince. Everything you do embodies what a global citizen is. Just thank you so much for giving back to our youth, to our community, and for making the world a better place.
Our individual contest this year had students showcase all they have learned throughout the year via a writing prompt. Out of 3 choices, students chose 1 prompt to complete, some of which will be featured here today.
The first prompt asked students to create their own comic book addressing a global issue that they are concerned on based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These global goals, which range from alleviating poverty to achieving gender equality, served as the inspiration to the creative and inspiring books that the students made.
The second prompt, The Voice of a Generation, had students write and present a speech addressing a current global issue that they are passionate about. Each student had to choose a current problem and conduct research on the pressing global problems they believe should be addressed. These speeches not only showcased the students' eloquence, but also their riveting proposals to solve global problems.
Lastly, the final prompt asked students to pick a 30 under 30 nominee. Accompanying journals explained why that individual made such an impact on the world in the last year and why they deserve to be showcased as part of Forbes 30 under 30. Students picked a diverse range of people, showing that they are in tune with the people who influence global issues today.
All three of these prompts allowed students to showcase what they learned and issues that they are passionate about through a medium of their choice. We hope you enjoy the contest winners that are featured at the symposium today.
So without further ado, it is my honor to present to you the finalists for the Voice of a Generation prompt. First, we would like to welcome up our middle school finalists. And I think to start, we have Miss Patty Diaz from Mrs. Smith's 8th grade AVID class.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a former social activist who once said, "I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." This saying is from his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," which intended to end racism in the United States and call for civil and economic rights. 55 years after this speech was given, our world still suffers from hatred, discrimination, and ignorance. Why does racism still exist? We live in the 21st century. To understand why we still have this problem, everyone needs to fully understand what racism is. Racism, defined by the dictionary, is the idea that one's race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to the other. I question if that's what racism is. Racism is a tricky thing. You know when fear engulfs you, it blocks your ability to rationalize or think properly, then ignorance sets in instead of knowledge. How many of us have done foolish and even fatal things out of fear? This is how racism works. Because we fail to understand those unlike us, our minds are mumbled and conclude irrationally, and many times our conclusions are faulty. And for this reason, racism can take different forms like prejudice, discrimination, or hatred because of their skin color, culture, or national background. Racism is a significant problem in our world because studies have shown that racism can hurt people's health and welfare. It can cause feelings of sadness, anger, anxiety, and depression. It can also lead people to withdraw from work or study. Racism can take in many different parts of the world. Currently, racism is a rising issue in Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, Italy, and the United States. Racism is an important issue to me because my family has been victims of racism. When my mom was in middle school, kids at our school would pull her hair, push her down, and make fun of her because she is Mexican. And 2 weeks ago, I was in the car with my grandma heading home from church, and she told me that a lady asked her to sit at a different table and that more Mexicans sit at the table that she was asked to move to. But luckily, my grandma stood up for herself and told the lady that I'm sorry, but I can sit wherever I want. This is an important issue to talk about in my generation because it can weaken our community as a whole. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and at times like these, we need to help each other out and not be rude and ignorant to one another. But racism wasn't always ignorance. Racism used to be at a point where a person of color was nothing but property, and they were separated from others like racial segregation. Racial segregation was the separation of people into racial or other ethnic groups in daily life. There was a solution for this, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act ended segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Nowadays, our world is so diverse, and this is where racism plays part. It can come from fear and anxiety. People may worry that some groups pose a threat, whether to the safety of the community or to the national identity. We need to educate people. We need to teach people that you can't base opinions on people because of their skin color and their national background. People also need to understand that you weren't born with racist thoughts. You were taught it. People also need to understand that you can't completely get rid of racism unless you want to help. So as professional soccer player Mario Balotelli once said, you can't delete racism. It's like a cigarette. You can't stop smoking if you don't want to, and you can't stop racism if people don't want to. But I'll do everything I can to help.
Thank you so much, Patty, for that amazing and powerful speech. Now we would like to introduce our high school finalists. I would like to welcome Miss Lauren Cole from Mr. Brown's MUN class at Laguna Hills High School with her speech on mental health.
Stigma, a mark of disgrace associated with a particular quality, circumstance, or person. All throughout history, mental illness has been stigmatized, misdiagnosed, and misrepresented. In ancient cultures, it was thought to be possession by some demonic force or lack of religion that caused the illness. Throughout human history, mental illness has always either been considered disgraceful or fake. Since 5000 BCE, the oldest known time that we can trace mental illness, there has been this horrible stigma that has been associated with these disorders. Some negative arguments that have been used to criticize mental illness are as follows. It is a made-up affliction, an excuse to be lazy, or gives people something to blame for their churlish behavior. Others say that people fake mental illness for attention. This, unfortunately, can be true at times. However, it does not account for the rest of the people who actually have to deal with psychiatric disorders. In a diagnostic interview done by the National Comorbidity Survey Adolescent Supplement, also known as NCSA, 49.5% of adolescents interviewed had some form of mental illness, and an estimated 22.2% had severe impairment because of the aforementioned illness. Sadly, people choose to discredit these very real ordeals. It is so incredibly frustrating to see someone completely write off a panic attack, depressive episode, or temporary break as a stunt pulled for attention. Or overhear as someone tells another person that mental illness isn't real. The invalidation has gotten so frustrating and been so intense that only about half of the adolescents previously mentioned were getting treatment for their specific illness. Many are ashamed to even talk about mental illness to their friends and family for the fear of being judged harshly. Even on the silver screens in Hollywood, mentally ill people are usually the antagonists of many movies and TV shows. In 2006, a study was conducted to see how many Americans believed that people with mental disorders were likely to act out in violence. The results showed that 60% believed that schizophrenics were prone to violence, and 32% believed that depressed individuals were also prone to violence. However, only 18% of all people who have some form of psychiatric disorder are likely to commit a crime and are highly misunderstood. Imagine seeing and hearing things that nobody else does, or suddenly feeling like someone is out to get you. Imagine waking up every day only to feel so hopeless that you wish you didn't even wake up at all. Imagine being so anxious that you have a panic attack and you can't breathe. Imagine hearing the news that you don't have as much control over your mind as you had once thought. I am almost 100% sure that at least one of you listening to this speech could relate to at least one of those things. Whether one has experienced one of these situations or not, it is one of the most terrifying ordeals that can lead to an individual feeling isolated and alienated. Even though you might feel like you have lost control over your mind, realize that nobody is completely alone in this fight and that there are helpful resources available. Generation Z should be known for doing something great.
So what do you say? Aid me in banishing the stigma on mental illness. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Now for our next contestant, I would like to welcome from Mrs. Thompson's class at Newport High School, Mr. Kanaya Adams on gun violence.
Firearms are one of the most talked about topics of this generation, and yet little to no progress has been made to protect said generation from its lethality. Firearms have the potential to destroy our generation, to instill unrelenting fear in the remaining population, and only when it affected people of affluent background was it brought to national attention. But the truth is, gun violence killed over 36,000 United States citizens in 2015 alone. The opposition likes to argue that, quote, more guns create less violence, and that, quote, burglars will not attack if they know guns are around. However, researchers at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard University reported that firearm assaults were 6.8 times more common in the states with the most guns versus the least. Also in 2015, a combined analysis of 15 studies from the researchers across the country concluded that gun owners and people who have access to guns at home are twice as likely to be murdered by their own weapon, and gun owners are 5.9 times more likely to commit suicide. When data seems to show otherwise, it is usually a result of the placebo effect or clever manipulation of data. One example is the small town of Kennesaw, Georgia, also known as Gun City, USA, where guns have become mandatory for all residents. Data suggests that crime since 1981 has reduced 75% in Kennesaw because of this new law. But the problem is, 1981 was a gun violence anomaly. If you take the data from before 1981, the crime drop disappears. Gun owners are also more likely to take unnecessary risks by going into unsafe areas, but the reason they do this is because they feel safe. And that is all that matters for many people. All they need is the apparent logic behind having a gun for safety, and they will never let go. They ignore the scientific evidence and turn from paranoia, therefore resisting stricter laws that may take away their guns. Another reason for the pushback could very well be due to the old saying, you have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide. So what are the pushers hiding? Stricter control does not mean taking away guns from law-abiding citizens. So the people pushing the hardest against gun control are unlikely to be fit to be in possession of a firearm anyways. Another reason progress has been slow to non-existent for the past 2 decades has been the responsibility of the NRA calling the CDC's research on gun control, quote, pseudo-scientific studies disguised as research. Following that late 1990 statement, Representative Jay Dickey of Arkansas attempted to shut down all scientific studies on the matter by mandating that the CDC could no longer put any money towards advocating for gun control. That bill, unfortunately, has been renewed every year since 1996. Later, Dickey claimed that his intent was not to stop all gun research. However, in 1995, the CDC managed to finalize the data of how often guns are truly used in self-defense via a nationwide survey. Only about 1% of the people surveyed said yes, that they were. And another factor is people refuse to believe that guns are the problem, and that people just need to be better citizens. An increasing body of research suggests that violence is a contagious psychological behavior, and so they say guns will not matter. However, the ability to eliminate 12, 50, or 100 people in a matter of seconds should not be given to anyone who may or may not use it for nefarious purposes. The ability to take lives is horrible, even for trained soldiers and police officers, and if some politicians in Congress are going to tell the country that abortion should be illegal because it counts as taking a life, then boy are their priorities messed up. Contact your city council, contact your governor, contact your representatives, and urge them to protect the lives of the innocent and believe in the statistical evidence rather than give way to paranoia. The new generation is coming, and we will not surrender until no one has to be injured and no one has to die from gun violence. We are the revolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kanaya, for that well-informed and mobilizing speech. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Miss Lonnie Jacobson from Mr. Brown's MUN class with her speech on hunger.
Travel around the world and you will find hunger everywhere, whether it be small town or large city. This dilemma has no boundaries. First and third world countries alike struggle from this issue. Hunger is a real problem that affects 12.9% of the world population. In fact, all around the world, 1 in 7 people are hungry. One person hungry is one person too many. 1/3 of the world's food is wasted while people are starving. Many people do not realize when they are wasting food, myself included. However, it is crucial society becomes more aware of this issue. Zero hunger is goal number 2 of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and efforts have been made to target this problem. Over the past years, the percentage of world hunger has dropped almost 12%. NGOs and UN organizations have both been striving towards decreasing hunger. NGOs like CARE work in almost 100 countries to help over 1,000 projects targeted toward humanitarian aid in fighting poverty. With the motto, Deliver Lasting Change, they work to end poverty from the source and installate sustainable solutions to development problems. Additionally, USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, is also participating. Improving agriculture boosts incomes, teaching shared responsibility for health and nutrition, empowering women in agriculture, managing natural resources, and preparing for disasters, and meeting immediate needs are a few ways they are working in places all around the world to fight hunger. Furthermore, many other strategies have proven effective in certain countries. For instance, the National Food Security Act launched in India will provide subsidized food or public finance food to 800 million people. The government plans to buy coarse grains from a selection of the over 31 million farmers that grow the crops, thus also increasing the farmers' incomes. India is among nations like Kenya, Colombia, and Nigeria that is recognized by the World Economic Forum for their increased and effective efforts for combating hunger. However, many African countries, especially Central African countries, suffer from extreme hunger. In detail, Central African Republic is the most hunger-stricken country in the entire world. Faced with conflict, political instability, and violence, Central African Republic's food production has been halted and is causing displacements of its people. As a result, over half the population is hungry. Moreover, hunger even exists in places like America. In fact, 49 million Americans have a hard time putting food on the table. This struggle is defined as food insecurity, the lack of access to enough food for all household members. In the United States case, hunger is not necessarily caused by a lack of food, but poverty. In detail, many people cannot afford the food they need, especially healthy foods. Hunger comes in many forms, but all are equally draining and impactful. In fact, hunger is not only a feeling of discomfort caused by lack of food, it is something that causes loss of potential. Studies have shown that there is a barrier between learning and children. So many children hungry all around the world, some brilliant, some talented, are left in the dust because of hunger. Their hunger keeps them from pursuing their dreams. Generation Z is a generation where technology is at its peak, and everything we need seems to already exist. But we need innovators. The world would be nowhere without them. The world would be nowhere without the curious people who explored the world. The world would be nowhere without the people everywhere who saw a need for change and went after it. Hunger has no right to take away the heroes of our time. Even if the people struggling from hunger do not radically change the world, they deserve a spot in it, as well as a fair chance. Dr. Norman Ernest Borlaug, an American agronomist, once said, "You can't build a peaceful world on empty stomachs and human misery." He is correct, and while strides have been taken to ending the problem, there is still a ways to go. One way the average person can help is through meal packaging locally. Associated with Rise Against Hunger, anybody can package meals that go all around the world, specifically to some feeding programs in third world countries. It is a smaller action that can make a big difference. Another way is to promote less food waste. Particularly in America, portions are very large and a great portion of that goes to waste. As a matter of fact, if 1/4 of the globally lost food was not wasted, 870 million people could be fed. Now, not everyone realizes how their food waste affects the world, but if they understand the consequences, they are more likely to be more careful. Finally, education is the most effective way to end hunger. For instance, teaching sustainable farming practices is far more impactful than a donation, though still helpful. Teaching children what foods to eat, how to grow it, And more can be the most bountiful gift of all. Not only that, but installing food services in school is an effective way because it's an enticement for kids to come to school. They can receive an education as well as a meal. These are a few ways that can truly make a difference in ending hunger. And one can only cover the tip of the iceberg of hunger in one speech, so I will end with this. Hunger is not any problem. It is a problem that affects people all around the world in ways unimaginable. It is one of the greatest evils that is not treated as such. Hunger is from a plethora of problems, but it is hoped to end so the world may truly grow to its full potential. The world should be hungry for change, hungry to end hunger. Thank you.